Let's take a look together at the cross-section of one typical skeletal or striated muscle. In order to understand a little bit better of its composition, this diagram is going to be quite helpful to us. So let's take a look at this and find out exactly what we want from this picture to help us out. As you can see, the diagram shows one muscle which has been cut open, and also it illustrates its own insertion or attachment point to the bone. We'll take a look at the picture from lower end first, because what we want to see is a single structure which has been pulled out from the entire muscle, and that is the muscle cell or muscle fiber. As you can see, the content of a single muscle cell or muscle fiber are multiple myofibrils that are composed of contractile proteins, actin and myosin in particular. As they would overlap, they are creating a mechanism that is explained in physiology as the sliding filament theory. And of course, that explains when the muscle is doing its contraction, how is it possible that muscle actually shortens its length? For us, really, it is just important that we recognize presence of a single muscle cell or a muscle fiber to see it as being part of the peripheral or skeletal muscle and to find out where exactly it fits. Well, on this part of the diagram, you can see now more of these individual muscle cells or muscle fibers because they're also cut open. You can see their own myofibrils. Clearly, there has to be a bit of organization inside the muscle to be sure that the muscle's contractile force becomes properly directed. So there will be a very thin connective tissue layer that covers the entire surface of the muscle cell, and that one is called the endomysium. You can see it as this kind of very thin bluish line that circumvent the entire muscle. That is endomysium. But then, as the multiple muscle cells or muscle fibers need to be packed together, they become unified in a fascicle. The fascicle means the bundle. And of course, the bundle will have its own boundary, which we need to apply to the very surface of the fascicle. And that connective tissue layer becomes known as the perimysium. So now up to the upper part of the picture, where you can see a single muscle cell, muscle fiber being pulled out as the part of the fascicle. And of course, the perimysium and endomysium are two connective tissue layers that we already included. So now it is time for multiple fascicles to become arranged and united into a single muscle. And of course, that's going to be done with the role of another connective tissue layer that covers the entire muscle, and it is called the epimysium. So going from inside out, you encountered endomysium covering the individual muscle cell, then the perimysium that was wrapping up the individual fascicle, and finally on the very surface of the entire muscle, it's the epimysium. Meaning and role of these connective tissues is not only to keep the structure within the muscular belly, but rather to do something that is also exceptionally important. Endomysium, perimysium, as well as epimysium do not stop at the end of muscle cells or muscle fibers. They actually continue past the contractile part of the muscle, and they become united between themselves, endomysium, perimysium, and epimysium, and they form tendons through which muscle attaches to different parts of the skeleton. It could be a tendon of origin, which is part of the muscle which is attached to body, which is considered stationary, as the muscle is producing its contraction, or it could be tendon of insertion, which is seen on the mobile part of the body upon a contraction of that particular muscle. So tendon is illustrated here. It looks like being made of multiple fibers, and that is correct. So we define the tendon as dense connective tissue which connects a muscle to bone.